can't give you justice. This jury has given you what we as humans, the best we as humans can do to give you justice. Justice would be if I could reverse all of this, and I can't.
It was a cold November morning in 2009 when a discovery along a quiet North Carolina road would shatter the peace of a community and leave scars that would never heal. A case so heartbreaking, so incomprehensible, it raised questions that no one could easily answer. But this isn't a story of one moment or one discovery. No, it stretches deeper into choices made and lives intertwined, pulling us into a web of despair, secrecy, and unimaginable betrayal. At the center of it all was a little girl, a 5-year-old child named Shaniya Davis, bright-eyed, gentle, with a warmth that brought light into even the darkest corners of those around her. Shaniya had only just begun her life's journey, a journey that, for most children, is filled with boundless dreams, laughter, and innocence. But on that November morning, all of it was suddenly and violently cut short. In the days leading up to that morning, Shaniya's world had become one of mystery and hidden struggles. Questions lingered around her family, questions about what was truly happening behind closed doors. Shaniya's mother, Antoinette, had made choices that would soon leave an entire community reeling. To many, she was simply a woman struggling to keep her life together, a mother who, like so many others, had fallen on hard times. On the evening of November 10th, security footage captured a moment that sent waves of shock through the town, a moment that felt almost surreal, like a scene from a nightmare. There was Shaniya walking alongside a man in a darkened motel hallway. This single image would become a haunting symbol, a question mark hanging over everything that had come before it and everything that would follow. Authorities tried to piece together what led Shaniya to that hallway, to that man on that night. They retraced steps, questioned stories, and examined lives marked by hardship and loss. The deeper they dug, the more unsettling the picture became. The story that would emerge, one involving debts, desperation, and disturbing betrayals, would challenge even the most seasoned investigators. In the days that followed, rumors spread. Friends, neighbors, and strangers all wondered what had gone wrong. How could this happen to someone so innocent? As the investigation unfolded, it became clear that the answers were layered, hidden within choices that went far beyond that November morning. This is a story of Shaniya, of her innocence and her loss, but it's also a story about the forces that shape our lives: poverty, desperation, and the hidden battles people carry in silence. Before we dive deeper, consider this. If you were to look into someone's life, beyond their smiles and familiar routines, how much would you really see? What we're about to uncover is not just a story about a crime. It's a journey into the shadows of human choices and the consequences that ripple far beyond a single moment. Stay with us as we piece together the path that led a mother to unimaginable choices and a little girl to an unthinkable fate. In Fayetteville, North Carolina, the early days of November had a quiet chill to them. Most people were busy preparing for the holidays, going about their daily routines, unaware that within one small family's home, an unimaginable tragedy was about to unfold. At the heart of this story is Shaniya Davis, a beautiful, bright-eyed 5-year-old who, like most children her age, was full of innocence, laughter, and curiosity. She loved playing dress-up, adored her family, and saw only the good in everyone around her. But on the morning of November 10th, 2009, everything would change. It began with a phone call, a 911 call, from Shaniya's mother, Antoinette Davis, claiming her daughter was missing. Her voice cracked and trembled as she spoke, as if overwhelmed with terror and desperation. Shaniya had, according to Antoinette, vanished sometime in the early morning hours, slipping away unnoticed from her family home. Police immediately responded, combing through the house and the surrounding area, hoping to find some sign of the little girl. Neighbors joined in the search, scouring the streets, calling out her name. But as hours passed, and there was still no sign of Shaniya, the initial hopefulness began to wane, replaced by a creeping fear that something far more sinister might have occurred. With each passing hour, the police investigation intensified. Detectives arrived at the Davis residence, and from the start, there were strange details that didn't quite add up. Why hadn't anyone seen her leave? Why hadn't there been any signs of forced entry? The more they pressed Antoinette Davis for answers, the more inconsistencies seemed to surface. Her responses were hesitant, vague, and her demeanor an odd blend of distress and detachment only added to the mounting suspicions. When investigators started looking into the family's recent history, they were confronted with a complicated, troubled background. Shaniya's mother, Antoinette, had faced serious financial difficulties in recent months. Friends and family described her as a young woman struggling to make ends meet, overwhelmed by the responsibility of raising her children. But this wasn't the full story. The investigation soon uncovered evidence suggesting that her financial troubles had taken her down a dark, tragic path, one that involved associating with dangerous individuals and making unthinkable choices. It didn't take long for police to learn about Mario McNeil, a man with a criminal record and a reputation for violence. McNeil was known around town, a man whose mere presence seemed to send a shiver through those who crossed paths with him. And yet, shockingly, it appeared that Antoinette Davis had recently become acquainted with him. In fact, as investigators would later allege, Antoinette had somehow allowed McNeil access to her daughter. She was accused of facilitating Shaniya's disappearance, in a calculated exchange that would haunt the community forever. And then came the video, the haunting, grainy footage that brought national attention to this small North Carolina town. A security camera at a motel in Sanford, miles away from Shaniya's home, captured a man walking through the hallway, leading a small child by the hand. The child, wrapped in a pink coat, had her head bowed, walking obediently beside him. The man was quickly identified as Mario McNeil, and the child was unmistakably Shaniya. The sight was gut-wrenching, a 5-year-old far from home, in the hands of a man no one would ever wish near their child. With this footage, the search took on a new urgency. Every available officer was now focused on finding Shaniya, and the public was brought into the fold, flooding social media and news outlets with pleas for her safe return. For the next several days, search efforts grew increasingly desperate. Police, volunteers, neighbors, and family members scoured fields, wooded areas, and abandoned buildings. News reports showed crowds of people holding flashlights, combing through the dense North Carolina woods, and calling out Shaniya's name. Each day that passed without a sign of the little girl chipped away at the fragile hope that she would be found alive. As the search widened, so did the scrutiny of Antoinette Davis. The inconsistencies in her story had already raised suspicions, but as detectives dug deeper, they uncovered details that pointed to a chilling betrayal. It emerged that Antoinette's financial struggles may have driven her to commit an unthinkable act. Evidence suggested that she had willingly allowed McNeil access to Shaniya, a revelation that sent shockwaves through the community. For detectives, the question was no longer just where Shaniya was, but why this innocent child had been placed in harm's way. The very notion that a mother might betray her child in this way was almost too terrible to comprehend. Then, on November 16th, after nearly a week of relentless searching, the worst fears of the Davis family and the Fayetteville community were confirmed. In a wooded area along a rural road, Shaniya's body was discovered. She had been left there, alone, exposed to the elements. The news broke the heart of a nation, and the community mourned in disbelief. Vigils were held, candles were lit, and flowers were laid as people gathered to honor the memory of a young girl whose life had been stolen too soon. The sight of her small, innocent face in the grainy video would haunt the minds of all who watched it, a reminder of the last moments of a life cut short. Mario McNeil was arrested and charged with Shaniya's murder, but for investigators the case was far from over. Questions still lingered about the true extent of Antoinette's involvement. In the following months, court hearings and testimonies would paint a picture of a complex, disturbing relationship between Antoinette Davis and Mario McNeil. According to police reports and witness statements, McNeil had pressured, and perhaps even threatened, Antoinette. But whether fear alone could explain her alleged actions remained a point of intense debate. The trial was emotionally charged, with prosecutors detailing the horrific final hours of Shaniya's life. Experts testified about the conditions of her body when it was found, describing injuries that revealed a heartbreaking story of suffering. Jurors listened in silence, their faces pale as the prosecutor recounted every detail, building a case that left little doubt in their minds. The courtroom fell silent as Shaniya's image was projected on the screen, a reminder of the innocence that had been lost. In the end, Mario McNeil was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. For the community, this sentence offered some measure of justice, but it was a hollow comfort. Shaniya was gone, and no sentence, no punishment could bring her back. Antoinette Davis faced her own trial, charged with a series of crimes that included child abuse and trafficking. Her case stirred fierce debate, with some viewing her as a victim of manipulation, while others saw her as complicit in the betrayal of her own daughter. She would eventually be sentenced, but for many, no punishment would ever be enough. In the wake of Shaniya's death, Fayetteville was left in a state of profound grief and reflection. People gathered to remember her, to honor the memory of a child whose bright future had been extinguished. Strangers, family members, and friends alike came together, lighting candles, singing songs, and vowing never to forget the tragedy that had unfolded in their community. Shaniya's story became a symbol, a painful reminder of the importance of vigilance and the need to protect the most vulnerable among us. To this day, the memory of Shaniya Davis lingers in Fayetteville and beyond. Her story is told as a warning, a call to action to ensure that children are protected, loved, and safe. In her memory, the community vowed to continue fighting for justice, for reform, and for a world where tragedies like this would never happen again. Shaniya's life may have ended too soon, but her story lives on a legacy that calls each of us to look out for the innocent, to question the shadows, and to bring light to the darkness wherever it may lurk. Shaniya's spirit is remembered, her story told time and again in the hope that we might learn, might change, and might one day create a world where no child would ever have to endure such a fate. Her loss was a profound tragedy, but her memory remains a beacon, urging us all to be vigilant, to be compassionate, and to never forget. And so, in Fayetteville, the memory of Shaniya Davis lives on. Her bright smile, her joyful laughter, the innocent beauty of a child who deserved so much more, continue to remind all who hear her story that we must do better, that we must be better. Her life, though short, was a reminder of all that is precious in this world, and her legacy is one that calls for a kinder, safer world for all children. The tragedy of Shaniya Davis is not just a story of loss. It's a stark reminder of the responsibilities we bear as a society to safeguard the vulnerable, to protect those who cannot protect themselves, and to raise our voices against injustice. Shaniya's life was stolen, her innocence betrayed by those she should have been able to trust the most. Her story asks us to confront the darker realities that some children face, realities that, too often, go unseen until it's too late. In Shaniya's memory, we must do more than mourn. We must learn from this tragedy. We must be vigilant for the signs of neglect, for the silent cries of children who may be suffering in silence. We must demand accountability and work tirelessly to ensure that no child is left unprotected, that no family is forced to make impossible choices, that no community ever endures a loss like this again. Shaniya Davis was a daughter, a sister, a bright spark of joy in the world. Her light was extinguished too soon, but her memory lives on in those who remember her, in those who have vowed to make a difference. Let her story be a catalyst, a call to action that drives us all to do more, to be more, for the sake of our children. So let us honor Shaniya's memory not just with words, but with actions. Let her legacy be one of change, compassion, and courage. And may we never forget the little girl with the bright smile who deserved so much more. In the days following her tragic discovery, a grief-stricken community gathered together, their faces etched with the pain of Shaniya's loss. They held vigils, they wept, and they spoke about a little girl who deserved so much more, a life filled with the laughter, joy, and safety every child is owed. Shaniya Davis was 5 years old, with her whole life stretching before her, a child whose only fault was trusting the adults around her to shield her from harm. In the end, Mario McNeil would face life in prison, convicted of the murder and unspeakable acts committed against Shaniya. For many, the sentence felt like justice served, yet the hollow ache remained, a wound that would never fully heal. Shaniya's mother, Antoinette, would face her own judgment, sparking fierce debate and discussion. Could poverty, fear, or manipulation ever explain her choices? Could any rationale ever reconcile the betrayal of a mother toward her child? The questions lingered, unanswered, as people struggled to comprehend the unimaginable. Today, the story of Shaniya Davis continues to resonate not just as a tale of tragedy, but as a call to action. It is a reminder of the silent cries that often go unheard, the warning signs that go unheeded. For every child like Shaniya, there are countless others who endure hardship, neglect, or abuse, often hidden behind the walls of seemingly ordinary lives. Her story implores us all to open our eyes to the invisible battles fought in our communities, to reach out, to listen, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. If you or someone you know suspects that a child may be in danger, speak up. Take action. Make the call. Trust your instincts. Your voice could be the one that prevents a tragedy, that saves a life. In memory of Shaniya, let her story be a lesson, a reminder, and a promise to protect, to defend, and to cherish every child's right to safety, love, and freedom. And so we remember Shaniya not just as a victim, but as a symbol of our duty to do better. To the children who trust us, who rely on us to guard their innocence and nurture their dreams, let us commit to a world where every child grows up safe, loved, and protected. If you or someone you know suspects a child is in danger, don't wait. Speak up. Report it. Trust your instincts. Your voice could be the difference between safety and tragedy. Children deserve to grow up safe, loved, and protected. Together, we can create a world where every child is free from harm. And in memory of Shaniya Davis, let's make that promise today. Thank you for watching, for listening, and for remembering. May Shaniya's story inspire us to be vigilant, to be compassionate, and to be courageous in the face of darkness. Together, we can ensure that her memory becomes a beacon, a legacy that drives us to create a kinder, safer world for all children.